Priority number one would be to promote the positive role of trade in fighting COVID-19 and ensuring resilience in future health crises. Global value chains have allowed countries to retain access to diversified sources of medical equipment and thereby strengthen their response capacity. Contrary to what was a widely accepted view in the early stages of the pandemic, trade is not a problem in the crisis, but rather it's a core element of the solution. The Director General should promote multilateral or large-scale plurilateral efforts to reach a new COVID-19 agreement to liberalize imports, limit the resort to export restrictions, and facilitate the movement of critical medical supplies and medicines. The Director General should elicit a commitment from members to a standstill on new export curbs, and if possible, a rollback of restrictions previously imposed, many of which affect the world's poorest countries. Now, the tragedy of vaccine nationalism must be avoided at all costs. With equal distribution guaranteed across countries, the WTO should support the WHO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, and multi-stakeholder initiatives for vaccines to reach all when ready.
I mean, the digital economy is here to stay. E-commerce is a big part of it. It is also a way of bringing inclusion into the trade. You can see that for e-commerce, many micro, medium, and small enterprises, can be assisted to trade on e-commerce platforms. In fact, are doing so already. Many small and medium enterprises are using these platforms, and this is a way of bringing them in. The same with women. Women happen to own 50% of the micro, medium, and small enterprises in my part of the world and in the African continent. We've got to think very hard about how do we bring trade to be more inclusive of those who have been left out. And I think e-commerce is a very important way of including them, notwithstanding the problems that we'll have to solve on data flows, data localization.
The United States produces roughly 30% of the world's services. Yet, despite its globally competitive services sector, United States services exports are hampered by a web of impediments on cross-border trade, restrictions on foreign direct investment, and regulatory differences. These policy impediments to increase services trade affect a wide range of American workers and firms, and therefore warrant as much attention in negotiations as do agriculture and manufacturing. A reinvigorated CPTPP would provide an important example of high-quality agreement on services trade, covering a significant share of global economic activity, and could provide a competitive liberalization impetus to services trade discussions within the WTO. Second priority is to resuscitate the trade and services agreement. The 23 economies participating in TISA represent nearly 70% of the world's $55 trillion services market. A reinvigorated and formalized TISA would consolidate rules accepted by a large and diverse group of countries, laying the foundation for extending them to the multilateral system.
After a US election like the one we've just gone through, in this particular moment in time, I think there's a tendency for two things to happen. On the Geneva side, there's going to be sort of a collective sigh of relief. Phew, we got through that somehow. Now maybe things will go back to the way they were, back to normal, and we don't need to worry about things so much anymore. I want to caution against that because things really weren't working before. So I think we have to recognize that, and I think we have to confront that. On the other side, though, I want to talk about the United States. The initial reaction after an election like this, and maybe even after the last 4 years, is to kind of draw parallels with 2008, 2009, and to say, look, we have so many problems at home right now, we really can't focus on Geneva or the trading system. We've just got to tend to what's going on in our own backyard. And I really honestly think, unfortunately, that's the wrong way to look at it. The world is moving on without the United States. The United States needs to engage. And there's no better place, no more important place than for the United States to engage at the World Trade Organization.